Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and we have an opportunity today to work on several of the Nor 7500 offshore fishing reels. This is a big spinning reel capable of catching very big fish. You can use this in lieu of, say, a 3.0 or a 4.0 Senator targeting tuna fish, in that it's that big and that strong of a reel. Well, Nor reel here will take 300 yards of 25-pound test, so that'll give you an idea of how this thing is built. But we're going to take this reel apart. We're going to service it. Dave sent in 4 of these. We're going to make sure that they all get ready to go fishing again, and we'll do a video so that he can learn how to do it himself should he like to do that. Well, it's a big reel, and we're going to show you how to do that. But before we do, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of fishing reel repair, if you like to see fishing reels in general, if you like to learn how they're made, what kind of manufacturing goes behind them, the types of designs that are inside of them, and more importantly, how to fix them and do it yourself. Well, that's what this channel is all about, and I would encourage you to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please use the notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting the videos, and you can make a decision as to whether that's one that you want to watch. Today it's a big offshore spinning reel. Tomorrow it may be a small bait casting reel. It might be a vintage one, or it might be the current line or something. So we're going to get started. One of the problems with the Nors is that this darn little cap here, it's just a screw-on cover cap, seems to always fall off. Well, I guess you can order them if that's something that you would like to replace, but I've just noticed on this reel and a lot of other of those Nor reels, that cap does come off, usually because of boat vibration, and it just kind of makes it unscrew, and eventually it goes away. So we'll see if one of those might be able to be found. I'll see if I can contact Dave and see if I can order those if he wants to have those ordered. The Nor line has kind of gone through a transition. So Nor was founded in Miami in the 1930s. It was always set up as a offshore fishing kind of a company. And later on in life, it got sold and acquired by Zebco, of all companies. Zebco had Zebco Quantum, and it had Van Staal, and it had Nor. And recently, about 2 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer, Nor and Van Staal were sold by Zebco to Pure Fishing, which is Penn and Abu and Mitchell and those brands. And they took the Quantum and Zebco line, and that got merged into or acquired by Rather Products, which owns Lew's fishing reels. And that's where they stand today. So they kind of focused, or they kept their focus on the freshwater line going over to Lew's and the saltwater line going to Pure Fishing. Well, I'm removing the side plates as I'm telling you about that, and at least the side plate screws. What I want to do, I think, is take this handle off before I go further. This is a screw-in handle, so let's reverse that by turning this counterclockwise. For the generation that doesn't know what clockwise is, you turn it away from you to go clockwise, and you turn it towards you to go counterclockwise. I always like to put these screws on the table because the manufacturers sometimes use different size screws. Well, these 4 are the same, so when you go to replace these in the side plate, doesn't matter what hole they go in. I think you're going to be impressed by what's under the side cover here. This reel is a very strong and well-made reel with very nice gears. Well, I'm going to take the top off first. I'll just set that to the side. We'll come back and service that in a little bit. All right, now we should be able to remove that side plate easily. Famous last words, the rotor is getting in the way. There we go. And you can see that you have high quality, I believe they are stainless gears inside. You have a good amount of bearings, and you have a nicely machined reel. It's not sophisticated. It is very straightforward, and that's a good thing to me in design. We're going to take the 2 screws out. that hold on the crosswind block so that we can remove that, and we'll fully service the reel. So these reels probably get a lot of use. Looks like the greases inside have evaporated, and that's one of the reasons why you want to service your reels on a regular basis. Well, what's a regular basis? Most reels I recommend servicing once a year, and I also recommend that during that service you replace the line that's on your reels. Now, there's folks out there that will use a reel 2 or 3 times, and if you want to postpone this service, I say that's at your risk. But the truth is that the greases are going to evaporate whether you use them once or 1,000 times in the course of a year. And you want to take care to make sure that your reels are always greased and lubricated. All right, I just cleaned off the axle shaft. I was just checking to make sure that there's no burrs. This came out nice and easily, so I'm going to set that aside. I should have mentioned this before. Take pictures before you start taking things off. One of the things you'll notice is the orientation on the block, and you need to notice the orientation on the tie down that's going to hold the axle shaft to that block. Again, I left both screws on to make sure that they're the same. And we should be able to remove the main gear now. The crosswind block. Just want to check on this one to see what we have here. The crosswind gear. Sometimes that's held in by a screw. Let's pull that out. And then we can go up top and we can remove our rotor. Service the pinion gear, make sure everything is nice and clean, and do a reassembly of this. As I mentioned, these are one of the higher quality reels, and the price, surprisingly, was a lot lower than you might think for the quality of reel that you did get here. Notice on the back end of this that there's a gear in here, and that's one of the reasons why it's kind of important that you have that other side cap on. I can't imagine anybody pushing that out, but there is a gear in here, and it does come out through the, well, this one, the gear side, so we can't get that out. It's a 2-step gear, and it actually has a seal on here as well. I don't think we have anything more in there, but that has to come out of the front. And I just knocked a piece on the floor, but I have a hard mat there, so it's nice to make sure that all of that works properly. All right, that's your side plate gear. And a lot of what you're doing when you're doing servicing of a reel is you're doing a cleanup, getting rid of all the old greases and oils. I'm using a hard bristle brush for this. You could use a toothbrush, that works equally fine. You want to make sure that they all get lubricated. So what we're going to do here is oil the bearing, grease the gear. And we're going to put this one right back in. I noticed that the more you have on the table, the more you're likely to do what I just did there, which is knock it on the floor. That one was just fumble fingers, but you know what I mean. Okay, we can reset this in. And remember, when you go to reset, or when you go to set this up, sometimes it's just easier to use the guide here. Put your main gear back in. Now there is a flat side inside that gear that you're going to set up. It's going to sit in there, and then our bearing is going to go on top of that, and then our shield is going to go on top of that, and then that little cover is going to go on. Right, that's how you service that gear in there. And I think if anything, what we're going to find out here is that it's just a lot of the dried greases. And I think Dave probably understood that when he was sending it in, that it's time to get these replaced, upgrade the lubes, clean it all up, get it out there again. Fishing season is coming to us. This is the time of year where you should be checking your reels and servicing them. All right, we're going to lay that off to the side. We'll give this one a good drink of oil on this side. There are 2 shin washers on the opposite side here. You should note that. That's going to be on the face side here. So what we can do, we can take them right off the one, put them onto the other for safekeeping. And when it's time to reinstall, we won't have to worry where they are. When I take my pieces and parts off, they all go into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container. In this case, I've been known to use just about anything, bottoms of milk jugs and things. But whatever your organization scheme is, just stick with it. That'll help you keep track of the pieces and parts, and it'll help you know where they are when it comes time to reinstall. Well, if you got one of these in pieces and parts, and you've kind of forgotten it, and you didn't take the pictures, one of the alternatives is to go out to the internet and get the schematic for the reel. The schematic is the engineering picture of the reel. And that will help you to see in an exploded view what the pictures and pieces and parts and orientations are and so on. We've just taken off the holdfast screw and the rotor nut. We should be able to lift the rotor off now. You do not need to do anything with the bales and that other than make sure that they're functioning. This has got a dead end on it. There's nothing going on there. Oil into the seams where they join the case, and then just work the oil in. Now if this was not flipping, if you had an issue with the bale performance, then you would take this off and examine the screws and the like. But as long as that bale is functioning, you don't need that. So here's another thing that's going on with this reel. This reel doesn't appear to have an instant anti-reverse. It has the old-fashioned dog that kicks out and grabs the grooves in the back end of the rotor. Now this may have one, but I'm not sure. But again, the pictures are worth everything here. To get to the pinion gear, notice that you have a spring that's coming through that anti-reverse dog there. Comes in on an angle, and at the orientation of that spring points out. This is on a carrier, so remove the whole carrier, put that into a safe place like your parts tray. And now there's a collar here. You can't pull that up without taking this collar off. At least that's my belief. So let's go ahead and take the 3 screws out to the collar. And we'll be able to get to the core of the pinion gear, and then we'll be able to make sure everything gets oiled and greased and cleaned inside that. And then we'll be on to reassembly. At this point, it doesn't appear that you need to remove the anti-reverse dog in order to remove the rest of this. On some reels that you will be working on, you will need to remove that dog because you don't have the clearance to the tie-down collar. In this case, that looks like they've engineered the collar around that. So we'll show you what's going on here. You can see that there's a little notch and a flat side of that, which is why pictures are good, because that's going to tell you that it belongs there. If you tried to install it this way, well, it's just not going to be working. Also notice the top and the bottom of it. Now these I'm just going to put off to the side because we'll be installing that rather quickly. Well, as I mentioned, the carrier seems to be bigger than the collar, so you couldn't have done that. Now we should just be able to pull that right out, and it pulls out nicely. That's one big main bearing there. So this reel has 3 bearings on it, and a lot of folks ask me, how many bearings should a reel have, and that's kind of my number. If you're going to do anything really heavy in saltwater, I'd like to see at least 3. I just got a reel the other day, $40 reel, Offshore, no-name reel, with 11 ball bearings in it. I don't think you need 11 ball bearings. It's kind of like the law of diminishing returns. After a while, you're getting marginal performance increases, and you're picking up a lot of risk in that those bearings are going to seize, particularly in an inexpensive reel and just using steel bearings. They're going to rust up on you. Nice fresh coat of grease onto the pinion gear once you've inspected it and cleaned it. Go ahead and put the bearing back on there. And there's another bearing right under here. So we got 4 ball bearings in here. I'm going to oil that bearing below. And then we can reinstall. It's right behind here. If you needed to replace the bearing, you would move those 2 screws out of the way. We don't need to do that. Also make sure that your case is clean. As I say that, I'm looking, there's a little piece of string sitting in there. There's a little piece of monofilament. I don't know where that came from. It's still there. Might be a reflection of the light. Okay, well, I'm not seeing that any longer. You want to take, while you have that case open, you want to take a cotton swab, get the old greases out of the side channel here. There's no value to that grease being inside the case. It's been thrown off of the main gear, or the oscillation gears, or whatever gear was greased. So there's no value there other than to lay low. It's got to be a reflection of light. Okay, now we'll take our assembly that we've freshly greased. We're going to put that back in. When you load your pinion gear in, make sure that you're flush to the case here. And again, there's a bearing down here or a holder. You want to make sure that you get that in correctly. Now we know, because we made a point of telling you this, that this is the orientation of the collar that holds the gear in place. And you can see there's not a lot of craziness going on in the design of this reel. It's straightforward with high quality components. And that's one of those what's not to like about this kind of a positions to be in. If there is a down play to this, it doesn't have an instant anti-reverse. We confirmed that when we took the carrier off. It has the old-fashioned dog running off the eccentric, and we'll show you how that operates in just a moment. I'm not finishing off the screws here. I'm leaving a little bit of play because the lines need to, the holes need to line up. As soon as I get all of those in, I'll go back and tighten them down. If I forget to tighten them down, the reel will make a lot of noise because the screw heads will bump up against the bottom of the rotor. All right. Let's tighten these off. One more. Okay, so we have our dog. We can put a little bit of oil onto where the dog is riding. Now let's go ahead and get that little eccentric. Remember, the hook faces out on the eccentric. This is an older design, but very effective. And that's how this sits. The hook comes through that little ridge. So when you're reeling away, everything is good. And as soon as you go to backpedal, it's going to push that out. And when it pushes it out, it's going to grab the ridge in the rotor. Just like that. All right, that's working fine. Let's take I'm going to leave that rotor off. Well, I can't. This, that little side plate was a little interesting in coming off there. Let's put the rotor back on. I'll head into our parts tray, get the rotor nut, because that came off in a traditional counterclockwise manner. It goes back on in the traditional righty-tighty kind of a method. And when I do this, I like to do the threading by hand. The reason for that is these are very easy to cross strip. Now, not this one. This looks like a stainless pinion, but a lot of them are brass or other marine metal kind of things. And if you strip them, you're going to have a problem, and that you're going to need a replacement. and you may even have a bigger problem in finding the replacement. Okay, tie down screw goes on. Now it's time to put the main gear back in. We've cleaned the main gear, but we haven't lubricated it. So let's go ahead and do that. Onto the shaft, and plenty of grease onto the main gear's teeth. You check the main gear's teeth. You do not want them to be crushed or bent or chipped. If they are, your reel's not performing properly. You need to replace the main gear. And set that to the side for a moment, because underneath the main gear you have to put the oscillation gear. Same thing now, you want grease on all sides of the oscillation gear. The teeth interface with the teeth on the back of the main gear. The face of the gear has the crosswind block riding on it, and the back slides against the grooves in the case here. When you load your oscillation gear, load it with the point going down and mesh it into the back gear here, which is driving this. Once you do that, main gear can go in, and remember what we said, there's two flat sides on this main gear. Look for the flat sides on that secondary gear in the back there, and then just insert it like that. Well, I got ahead of myself. I think we can probably sneak this in behind, but the crosswind block needs to go on before you put the main gear on most of the time. Let's see if we can slide it in underneath here. I got lucky. So that's how the orientation goes on the crosswind block. If you were confused, you would go back to your pictures and you would verify that that's how it is. Just a light coating of grease onto your axle shaft. Look for the notch in the axle shaft. That's going to sit in the crosswind block facing forward. Just like that. It needs to have a flat side here. That's where your clamp is going to go. I've seen reels come in recently. Pen reels have a similar tie down. And I've seen them come in with the rounded side facing out, and they clamp all bent up, and the reel not working as a result. There are two screws that are the tie-down screws for this. One goes in each side. And again, if you were curious about how or where that screw went, go back to your pictures. The other advantage I find to my parts tray is in knowing where the pieces are, and if there's any pieces left over in the end, well, you know you did something wrong, and you can inspect it. So there's been times where I'll find a spring or a little washer or something in there and make me wonder. Okay, we've already oiled down the bearing on the main gears. Let's oil the one in the case. And we can slip this over now. And for whatever reason, this design on the rotor leaves you just enough room here to get the case on. There's 4 screws. We noted when we first started taking this reel apart that it doesn't matter what side those screws come in. They're all the same size. So your choice. Okay. I like to hand turn the screws when I put them back in. I've been asked from time to time about the mechanical screwdrivers. I don't like them. I understand that hand strength may be an issue with some folks, and they need that assist. If you do, when you use it to tighten it down on the case, please do not tighten it all the way down. Leave yourself some room at the tail end. It's called leaving it proud, and finish the last turn or two with your hand. That way you don't risk binding the case or breaking a case, particularly in some of the modern reels with the graphites or the plastic cases. This one has a metal case. That's not the issue there. So if there's a downside to this reel, it's that it's a heavy reel, but you can see the quality of the components and the design makes it a very efficient reel. We're going to take some rod and reel cleaner now. I'm using a pen rod and reel cleaner. And while I have it off, it doesn't hurt to buff up all of the film that's been on there that's probably accumulated over a season's worth of use. The reel has been cared for. I get a lot of these in that are saltwater trolling reels that have not been cared for. They've been left in the rod racks, and that shows in the pitting on the parts, paint loss, all kinds of little issues that go along with that. It just doesn't take a lot of time to do a little bit of a cleanup like this, particularly with something like that rod and reel cleaner. It's not expensive. It just takes a little squirt on a kitchen scrubby pad, and you can see that it restores the luster to the reel, and it keeps any harmful salts and the like off of that reel, which is a good thing. Okay, all of my parts in the tray are gone. We have the handle on the side here, and we have the spool. So let's go ahead and do the spool. The spool has a drag stack up top. It's held in by a C-clip, and I'll use a little pick, and I'm going to hold my hand on that C-clip. Pick to pull it out, just like that. And I notice time is running short on my memory card. I'm going to stop, and I'll be right back on. Now, as I noted, right back on. Use that clip. I put that in my parts tray, and then I like to pull the drag stack out with that same clip. And you want to notice what's in there as well. This has got a lot of drag washers in it. It's a deep stack. Okay, these are Carbon-Tex type washers. It's got a little bit of grease on there. We can put some grease on it. When you use the grease, I'm using Cal's Universal Grease. Put it on. I use my gloved hand here to rub it in, and if there's any excess, rub it off. The first washer into the stack happens to be an eared washer. Then you put one of your Carbon-Tex on. The next one up, make sure all of these are clean, not pitted. If they are, work them off. This is a keyed washer. It doesn't have the points on the outside. It has a rectangle on the inside. And then they alternate just like that. So these are relatively small washers, but there's a few more of them, so it's a deep stack. Next one up then would be the eared washer. Those are the ones with the 2 points on it. Those need to fit in the cavity of the spool. Press them down. One more of the drag washers. Then the top washer. And now we can go back to the clip. And again, this is a spring, so please be careful with this. There is a ridge underneath here. You want to lock one side of that spring clip into the ridge and then pull it in using your hand strength and make sure that it seats in that slot. This is a retaining clip. That's the only purpose that spring serves, is it keeps the drag stack inside. I'm going to clean up a little bit of debris that's in there. This is a pretty good idea for sealing the drags. It has a big lip on top, and it has a little bit of a collar inside. We'll show you that in a moment, and a collar inside. So that's going to keep a lot of the water out of that drag stack. There we go. You'll see that we have a pretty good rubbery kind of a set of washers there. That'll keep the water out of there and help with the sealing of the reel. All right, this can go back on. Work it all the way down. Put your couple of turns on the knob, and we should be able to have that on. There we go. Tighten it down. Make sure that it's tight, and then back it off. You saw that we put greases on those washers. If you don't back your drag off after using it, well, it acts as a clamp. It compresses the washers, it forces the grease out, and well, it takes time off of the useful life of those washers. All right, nice cleaning up. One more thing to do then, put that handle back on. We can oil the little collapsible part of the handle. put that on, and now final test. Give it a run. That's a nice smooth operating reel. Let's flip our bail. Have you noticed we have a bang bail? This is really old school technology. It's going to come over and it's going to trip the bail by hitting the bar here. So it's an older style reel, but boy, I'll tell you what, it's one that's going to last and last and last again in terms of simplicity of design, high quality materials, and being well cared for. So I hope you've enjoyed that. That's the video on the Nor Offshore 7500 large scale big game spin fishing reel. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. Your efforts truly are appreciated. And to everybody, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.